Okay, team. So Act 3, this is when it really starts to get good. So in Act 3, Banquo starts to be suspicious of Macbeth. And I started to preview this in Act 2. I got ahead of myself just because Banquo is my favorite character. But he reflects on the prophecy, right? It came true. Macbeth is he's king now, but he played most foully for it. And he knows he is now a threat to Macbeth because one, he knows he murdered his king. And two, the second prophecy was that his sons would be king, which means that Macbeth really isn't going to be king for long because he has no heirs. He has no one yet to continue to carry out his lineage. And Macbeth knows this, of course, as well. Now, Banquo's death is super intriguing. And if you look here in the timeline, obviously the motivation for Macbeth is because Banquo's future children will be kings according to the prophecy. And the thing about Macbeth is, he's a brave warrior. He has killed all these men in battle. But something to notice when you think about characterization and a character's actions and indirect characterization, like what is Shakespeare teaching us about Macbeth? Macbeth doesn't kill Banquo himself. He doesn't murder his best friend. He hires assassins. He hires murderers to kill Banquo and his son. And Clarence is young, right? He's like 5 or 6 years old. So not only is he murdering his best friend, he's also murdering his very young and innocent son. And he doesn't even do it himself. He hires people to do it. So what's that tell you about Macbeth, right? And one of my favorite lines is when Banquo yells, "Fly, good Fleance, fly. And if we could do this in the classroom, we would actually act this part out, and I would have one of you run out of room 114 as Fleance on your knees because you're a tiny kid, and it's super funny and hilarious. But, here's our new normal." The thing is, Fleance escapes. The murderers can't catch him. But Fleance's dad is no longer, Banquo is murdered, and he's old enough to remember that his father was murdered by the king. Interesting. I wonder why he's going to go and get the crown for himself one day, right? But that is, of course, for the future of Scotland. And we'll come back to that later in the show. Now, at the banquet, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth hold a big banquet for all of the Thanes, all of the lords and ladies of Scotland. Now, there are 2 people missing from the banquet. The first person missing is Banquo because he's dead. We know he's dead. The characters don't know he's dead yet. The other person who doesn't show up is Macduff, because if you remember back to right after the murder, Macduff thought it was shady that Macbeth killed the guards. So he's a little suspicious that the king happened to die in his home and the host happens to just kill the murders instead of having everyone be questioned before executing them. So he doesn't show up to the dinner, and so that's important to note for what happens later. Now, if you come back to the banquet and who shows up as an apparition, it is, of course, Banquo's ghost. Now, again, depending on the director of the play or the movie, this can be interpreted in a number of ways. But something to note is only Macbeth can see the ghost in the audience. No one else can see this bloody Banquo coming in. And this is crucial because the audience is still in on the murder. There's a lot of dramatic irony because that he's talking to the ghost of Banquo, but the characters have no idea. To the characters, it just looks like Macbeth is losing it. He's going completely insane. And again, coming back to this idea, is this still the witches doing their bidding and haunting Macbeth, or is this his guilt and he's losing his mind, essentially? And as the audience, you get to interpret that. And then again, coming back to the idea that once Lady Macbeth really covers it all up for her husband. She's like, oh, he's having fits. Like, this is really awkward. Maybe you should all go. He's always had these fits. But as a king, kings are supposed to be godlike. So if you're having fits in front of all your dinner guests and they can't even sit down and eat, that's going to become really uncomfortable. And people are going to start to be like, yo, this new Macbeth guy, he's not legit. He doesn't. If he can have all these fits and be sick, how can he actually lead a country and be godlike? Da 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 da. And at the end, Lady Macbeth tries to cover up, asks everyone to leave, and is basically telling her husband "Yo, get it together, man up. You just ruined this for us, and you need to be careful because people are going to start to be suspicious." And no, she didn't want him to murder Banquo. That was all on Macbeth. She wanted him, after murdering Duncan, to just be king and enjoy being king. But once again, Macbeth's ambition makes him get ahead of himself and makes him take his fate into his own hands rather than just wait for fate to happen to him. So at the end of the scene, Macbeth is still fearful and paranoid. And even though he killed Banquo, he still has other people to be paranoid about, because Malcolm and Donalbain are still alive. It's just one is in England and one is in Ireland, and they're supposed to be the true kings. And Macduff didn't show up to the dinner. So he's like, this guy, he's suspicious of me. So Macduff is the next person he's worried about, because he's worried about his loyalties. And so he says, okay, I need to go to the witches to figure out what to do next. And that is going to take us